This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hi, I'm hoping you've had a nice Christmas, and today is a special episode. It's episode 150, and if I'm honest, I wasn't sure if we'd actually get there, at least publishing this episode today. I haven't shared this in previous episodes, however, the last few months has been pretty difficult in our house. I've lost a good friend unexpectedly in an accident recently. I've also been involved in a separate accident and had whiplash to deal with. That and winter bugs and illnesses over the last few weeks have meant it's been, interesting. Not a lot of fun in our house. It's certainly been a test of my own mental toughness, and I've had to think about some of the lessons that different guests have shared to help myself. So I might be sounding a little bit rough today with my short introduction here. So moving forward into 2023, obviously I hope it's going to be a happy and healthy start for people in our house, and likewise for you, the listener. I really do wish yourself and your families the very best. And I'd also like to say a big thank you for your support for the podcast. I'm hoping to take it to a new level in 2023 with some of the guests that I've got lined up. And as far as today's episode goes, I would like to think it's an inspiring episode. I've taken takeaways from 10 guests who've appeared on the show in the past year. So that's right, we're going to focus on their key takeaways. You'll hear from a mental toughness practitioner, sports psychologists, Olympians, mental performance coaches, and an occupational therapist too. Please enjoy it. It's the first of 4 special episodes.
I would say for me, and understanding more about mental toughness and the concept, I would definitely say to have a self-awareness of your own thinking puts you at a massive advantage. So, in trying to improve within your sport or even within your role in work, just to understand more about how you think is going to put you at an advantage. So it's not saying everyone has to be tough. It's not necessarily about that. It's about the self-awareness, because there's some very effective mentally sensitive individuals that they're self-aware, so they know how to manage it. I'm mentally sensitive when it comes to emotional control, but I manage it now, and I didn't used to. So we're usually a mix of both. So it's very good to have that understanding of yourself and where we are. And I would also say as well, to try and think positively and push negative thoughts away. That really works personally for me, to have certain little sentences or mantras, anything that's very simple, but it's just, we're doing this, I can do this, whatever works for the person, just to calm yourself down and say, we're doing it. It almost makes the emotion irrelevant then. It's like, we're doing it anyway. So we can feel like this, or we can calm down because we're going to do it. And I would say breathing as well. Within sport, lots of different types of sports. I think when your breathing is short and shallow and out of sync, that can really affect your performance, can't it? Because you're just not getting the oxygen in cells. So, some real good quality breaths in whatever you're doing, it really works.
The resilience, so much of that has to do with being okay with losing. And that's not to say that you want to lose, but you can't be at your absolute best if you can't handle losing. Like, losing cannot be an unacceptable outcome. It's probably statistically likely that you're going to lose all the time. And if that's the thing that prevents you from being at your best, well, shit, you're never going to win. Because it's like every athlete only has so many shots at greatness or glory. And understanding that is very beneficial. You got to know when to swing for the fence and be like, okay, the goal is this. It's an audacious goal. It's unlikely to happen. But the only way it can happen is if we do this, this, and this, which means the only thing to do is this, this, and this.
Well, I think your mindset is the most important driver of your performance. I think clearly the physical elements and the tactical and technical elements are important. But for me, once you've mastered those basic skills, your mindset is the biggest difference between your best and worst day. And I don't think we spend long enough working on it, really. And I think there are some skills. Obviously, your podcast, David, is a great resource, and your website and your coaching that you offer. I think that's fantastic to any youngsters that need support. But definitely, the more we can build our coping resources and our resilience and our confidence, that's going to be absolutely critical. I think, for me, when we see talent coming into some of the top academies, I've been lucky to work in Premier League soccer and international cricket and England rugby. And I think our talent is just our passport into the club, really. When you get little Johnny into Chelsea Football Academy, age 14, all the other 30 players there are going to be equally gifted. Now that passport needs activating with tenacity, hard work, almost an entrepreneurial spirit to explore and test and learn and improve and recover and adapt. The players that I'm interested in, the ones that have, sat on the bench or torn their Achilles or played in a different position or traveled the world and lived abroad in a different culture. That's what it takes to be an elite performer at the top level for a decade or so. And while we definitely need the intellectual engine in the workplace or in school, or we need the hand-eye coordination in our sports clubs, it's that inner driver of motivation and tenacity and resilience that's really the defining characteristic of the elite performers that stay at the top.
Well, I think the first thing is that you have to be true to your inner voice. I mean, the whole world is going to say no to you. You can't do it. But you've got to say, this is what I want to do. This is who I am. This is really where I want to go. I mean, no one gives you a life manual, how to live your life and how to where you want it to go. I mean, for even myself, I was just a little boy, came from a small town in the middle of rural Indiana in the United States, a little farm town. And as I look back now, and as I've gone on to do some unbelievable things, meet great people, it seems to me like all the great successful people started out as almost nobodies. And I remember, hearing a long time, because before somebody really becomes somebody, a lot of people thought they were a nobody. And so that's the one thing, is that you've got to put yourself first and say, hey, this is really, what's important to me. The second thing is, the ability to understand that, you're going to fail. And the point being is, if you want to be successful, you want to put yourself out there. You want to take more risk. You want to flex that risk muscle. You want to take chances. I mean, people who really are on their deathbed aren't really, regretting all the things they did. They regret the things that they missed out on because the time got away from them. They wish they'd done this and wish they'd done that and wish they'd been a little bit more crazy, and done a lot more fun things or said, certain things to certain people and because they were jealous and petty and pious. And to me, it's really, living the golden rule and, treating others as you want to be treated yourself. I mean, I think that's just huge. And the final thing is that there will be, some stepping stones to success, and some of them will be big, stepping stones, but you don't want to make them stopping stones to your success. You just want to keep on going. There's going to be a way for you to get there. Now, when people ask me, am I going to be successful? Am I going to make it on tour? Am I going to make it, to the Olympics? I don't know. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, I'm not godlike here. And people say, well, you can judge talent. And I go, I don't really judge talent at all. What I look at is, I look at, human beings. I look at their motivation, and I don't really have a monitor, but I really look at people's desire and their heart. It's hard to measure that. And, and for me, when we start talking about mental training, mental toughness, when you have people who have psychological hardiness, who have grit, who have persistence, I mean, one of the toughest competitors you're going to face is the competitor who will not stop, the one that just keeps coming at you. I mean, you've got to either put them down or you've got to actually get in front of them yourself. I mean, because they have nothing to lose and they really, really want it. And I remember, talking with, the great baseball player from the United States, Mike Schmidt, and he was talking about him and another little boy were actually going after a ball that had been hit a home run at a Major League Baseball game. and he and this other little boy both had a handle on this ball. And this is really where I thought, this is a great, analogy, a great story. And they were fighting. They were down in the bleachers and they were pulling it. And Mike said he really wanted that ball. He wanted it more than anything. But he said that other little kid, he had to have it. I mean, he went maniacal. He went nuts and he took it from me. And he goes, and that's when I really learned, do I really, really want something so bad that I have to have it? And for me, that's really what, great people do. Entrepreneurs, businessmen, athletes, show business people, they don't care what anybody else thinks. They care what they think about themselves, and they're true to it every day. And every day they go out. Do they play to play great, or do they play not to screw up or embarrass themselves? And the great performers always play and make the choice to play great. It's a tough choice, and sometimes it's tough to do that. But that, to me, is the ultimate line. If people are listening to this, that's really what you've got to get yourself to. Do you really go out to find out how great you can be? Do you give yourself permission, the emotional freedom to go out and just perform as well as you can? Or are you worried about what other people are going to think, how you might screw up, how you might embarrass yourself? Because if you're going that way, well, you're not alone, because 99% of the world's out there. And it's when you separate yourself, you make yourself unequal from everybody else. So that's sort of, the three keys, I would say.
I suppose summarize and give one takeaway for the sports psychologist in training here who's going through stage 2 or the basic SIPR process at the moment. What would that one takeaway from the conversation be?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I tell myself is, it's really important to acknowledge that you're working with the people you're working with and not working on them. So let's say if you're working on them like a surgeon and they have absolutely no control and you do what you do. Whereas, in a sports setting, in a sports psychology setting, if you do that, it's sort of hard to kind of for them to kind of let you know what they're doing and what they're feeling. And it becomes very, very hard to kind of get your ideas across as a result. But if you work with them, they're going to tell you things, you can tell them things. It doesn't necessarily have to be, about the sport they're on, but it's just the kind of opening that channel of communication. And eventually they're going to open up to you and you're going to get that moment and I know exactly what I want to try and do here. And then you can start planning your sessions according to that. And then you might change your mind, but that's okay. But just the biggest lesson for me is, don't assume that you have to kind of figure out a solution right there on the spot. The first session, even the second session, don't feel the pressure of, I have to come up with something because they've asked me to work with them, or they're paying you to do whatever they've asked you to do.
Yeah, I would say that the first one is recognizing that it's a relationship. The recognizing that, a parent-child interaction is bidirectional, and that the first thing therefore means that you as a parent need to take care of yourself and understand what's impacting on you, because it'll impact on your child, and vice versa. Try and understand what's impacting on your child and how that impacts on you. I think the second thing for me is around the regular conversations, trying to make communication and conversation a standard part of your practice as a parent, I suppose, and not being afraid to take feedback from your child around how you are involved. And the third one is around that, recognizing why you're all doing it, really, thinking about why were we doing youth sport in the first place. If you were impacted by COVID, how did life change when you couldn't do it? And what were you looking forward to getting back to as a parent or as a child when sport did open up again?
Yeah, I think no matter what your situation is, you might not even think that you went through a lot of trauma, or you maybe have never even considered it. But I would say taking a 10,000 foot overview of your life and addressing, any kind of struggles that you went through, and then also what you can take from those struggles would be a huge first step. Because a lot of the things that maybe we see as struggles and we maybe have not dug into could provide, nuggets of knowledge or wisdom for future situations. I see that for myself all the time, whether that's, from one client to another or my own personal struggles. Another one that I would say we've kind of reiterated numerous times is, live in the moment. If you're with your family, truly be with your family. Well, if you're just scrolling away, I mean, you're physically there, but you're not mentally there. And the last one is, again, I'll leave with kind of the first step that got me out of being, in the darkest place I've ever been in my life, was realize that just because you think something does not mean it is true. Allow yourself to evaluate the thought and realize that, if it's not helpful to where you want to go, your own personal values, it's not worth, clinging to, and just keep on keeping on.
First one is me, classic one. Keep it simple. If you've got a problem, the chances are there's being overcomplicated somewhere along the line. Where do you want to be? What's the cost of that you need to lay down to get it? And what's your will to do it? Keep it really simple. I think the second thing to do is to realize is that you are the gold in the journey. So if you're looking for motivation or inspiration, whatever experience you go through in life, you get to take that everywhere, good, bad, or indifferent. You get to be the judge and jury of it all. And I think the last one is, I don't think we should ever underestimate that resilience piece. People are talking about all sorts of things these days, and resilience seems to be the thing that's been left in the wake. And I don't leave it in the wake. I meet it where it is. We've got a choice. We can either sit here and wait for boats to come in, or we can swim out to a few of them if we want more chances. And that involves getting in and getting wet. I say this all the time. I run a learn to swim business, and I say to the parents, some of the parents come going, oh, they're a little bit apprehensive. And I'm like, in order to learn to swim, you've got to get wet. What I'm really saying in that moment is there's got to be a leap of faith about us, regardless of what age we are. And that should be a beautiful thing. And we don't need to fear it. And we can completely morph and transfer how we see things. Once you start seeing things through a different lens, you feel different about it. I don't care what you say. I do. I do it all the time. I see it through a different way. And then all of a sudden I feel different about it. And I think that's the beauty of life.
First of all, be gentle to yourself. You're human. You're allowed to fail, and you have the right to succeed, right? And then I would say for coaches, your role is so important. But remember to be coaches, because this will prevent you from getting burnout and being overly involved. And also make sure you look at the strength and communicate what needs to be improved in a constructive way, so not to affect the self-esteem. And third, parents, be parents, and remember the value of your children, no matter what they achieve, and make sure you have the space for the relationship with your children outside sport, because they will really value it.
I think the first one, I'd say simply just for people to remember that mental skills are trainable, just like physical skills. That's the most important one, if you like. And in the same way as we can maintain our physical fitness, we can maintain mental fitness. So we need to be constantly doing these things. So these steps that I have in the book, you can visit these exercises regularly and train your mental skills constantly. Otherwise, they become rusty. I think the second one is whether you're an athlete or a recreational skier, you need to include mental skills training as part of your development. So you need to take a holistic approach to it. So it's everything that needs to be trained. I'm not suggesting that mental is more important than the technical or the physical. It's all important, but you need to get a balance of all of it. So I think that would be the second one. But in that is that don't use time as an excuse to say you can't do it, because it's so easy to build the mental skill stuff into other periods of the day, which are otherwise wasted. So the ski lift riding was the example of how I've done that in snow sports. So that will be number two. And number three is look to find flow. If you can, steps in this book are designed so that the sixth step is flow. So that is what you want to achieve. If you can achieve flow state regularly, you will have more fun. You'll enjoy what you're doing more. It sort of fits into the positive psychology side, but the chances are you'll also perform at your best. So in terms of it allowing you to perform as well as your skills you have, then if you can get into a flow state regularly.
It was great to listen to those takeaways again. It reminded me of some of those conversations that I've had. Some of the advice is first class, and there's so many nice, timely reminders there. As I said earlier, a huge shout out to you and a big thank you to you, the listener, but also big thank you to the guests who've offered these valuable insights. Now, one last request from myself today would be, I'd be hugely, hugely grateful if you can spend 20 seconds of your time. That's right, only 20 seconds of your time to give the podcast a positive rating, 5 stars if you can, and some favorable comments too using iTunes. This action really helps us reach more and more people and have a positive influence on people's lives, which is what the podcast is all about. So I alluded to it earlier, over the next couple of weeks, you are going to get some more surprises, some similar episodes to inspire you. In the meantime, have a fantastic new year, and I hope to hear that you'll be tuning in next week. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sport psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.